name is Rachel Goldberg. I'm an administrative officer in physiological nursing, and I actually just graduated 2 weeks ago with my master's in public health with a focus in behavioral health. And so I support a lot of our chairs, our vice chairs, some of our academic programs in physiological nursing. So when I was about 15 years old, I was a sophomore in high school, I developed what was known as EDNOS, eating disorder not otherwise specified. I had lost a lot of weight, my heart rate and blood pressure dropped significantly, and at that point I was pulled out of physical education. I wasn't allowed to do sports outside of school, and my pediatrician recommended I go to a nutritionist. And so this briefly addressed my problem. However, my family and we didn't really realize this was a mental health condition at the time. We thought it was just address the food needs, increase my weight again, and everything would be fine. However, that certainly didn't solve my problem, and I relapsed, and on and off for the next several years, saw a different therapist. My weight went up and down, and then I went off to college at Colgate University, which is in rural New York, and my family's in Los Angeles. And so they were not able to see me for several months while I was away doing my first semester in college, and my health deteriorated pretty quickly out of sight of my parents. And so when my parents saw me for Thanksgiving, there was a lot of concern over my health, and we went back and saw a different therapist, and we arranged a deal of sorts that if I could get my weight up to a certain amount by winter break, then I would be allowed to return to school in the spring. And if I did not, then I would be pulled out of school and put into inpatient therapy. Looking back, I honestly probably should have gone into inpatient therapy. My health was quite precarious at the time, but for me, the threat of disrupting my life and getting pulled out of school was enough to realize I was at my rock bottom and really needed to make a change, and not just a temporary one to sort of get my weight back up and then relapse again later. I really needed to fix what was going on. So it was a very long process over the next year or so to restore my weight, but also really, really work on my mental health. So continue going to therapy, seeing nutritionists, and really digging into some of what was going on with me. I'm always willing to talk to people about what I went through. I would rather people get the facts, know what it is like to live with a mental illness, and realize that everyone's experiences are different, and that what I went through doesn't necessarily represent what anyone else went through. So, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. It also doesn't mean that you could necessarily know what's going on with me just by looking at me. My anorexia, it doesn't impact my day-to-day life anymore, but interestingly, it's not something that I'm very comfortable talking with them about in the workplace. I've been very open with my friends, with my family about my condition. In my master's program, I was very open with some of my classmates, and I did an internship focused on reducing mental illness stigma. So again, that was a very comfortable environment where I could talk about my experiences. But I think there's something quite different talking about your mental illness at a workplace where you're supposed to be professional, and for some reason there's still a stigma around talking about your mental illness, which there certainly shouldn't be. So I had a fantastic therapist throughout part of high school, and she really helped me to understand that my anorexia wasn't my problem. It was a symptom of other things in my life, and the main focus of that was my perfectionism. I have always needed to be perfect in a lot of what I do, which is quite common with people who have anorexia. I've always worked to get top grades when I've gone through school. This has also manifested a little bit in the workplace, though I'm now much better at letting things go, but I hold myself to very, very high standards, and that manifested in also wanting to have the perfect body, which I also want to stress that that's perfect by Western ideals of beauty, which is quite different in other cultures. My anorexia wasn't my core problem, it was my perfectionism. An important myth is that some people think that if you have a mental illness, there's something wrong with you inherently, which is certainly not true. Mental illnesses can come from a variety of different factors. some hereditary, some environmental, and it in no way means that there's something wrong with you. So many people have mental illnesses of varying types, varying degrees, and that's just one part of who you are, and it doesn't define you. It doesn't mean anything is wrong with you.